Hello, I'm Jamie and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm talking about episode 4 of series 20 of Taskmaster, and not to get negative too early, but I do think, even though I had some good moments, that this has been the weakest episode so far, and there were also some slightly tense moments in the studio as well. So it definitely was an interesting one. So yeah, let's just get into it. So starting off with the prize task, and this time it was the present that if you received it on your birthday would make you say that's the most gorgeous gift ever. And we started off extremely strongly with Reese's one, which was an old child's dollhouse that he turned into a haunted house. And this was so cool, so beautiful. It definitely would make you say this is the most gorgeous gift ever. And I love that he actually made it and he showed himself making it. I love it when contestants put in the effort. I think it's so good, and it just paid off so well. There were so many amazing little details. I love the gothic theme, I love the pumpkins and the lights, especially when they turned on the lights as well and showed it illuminated and stuff. It looked so nice. And yeah, I think this is definitely the winner. As soon as we saw it, we was like, this is the one that's going to win. I thought it was beautiful. It is genuinely gorgeous and a prize that I would love to have. Something I would love to own. So yeah, 100% knew this was going to get 5 points straight away. We then had Phil, who took it in a completely different direction, and his was a picture of himself with the Mayor of Preston outside Preston bus station. Like Greg said, weirdly, it was quite nice, and I don't know why, but I like that he at least put in some effort of going to visit the Mayor and taking a picture, and he had Preston themed stuff on him as well. So I did like it. Again, I think in just comparison to Reese's though, it wasn't as good, obviously. We then had Anya's, and I quite liked the idea of hers, which was the book of gossip in a very opulent looking book, a very beautiful looking book. And I did think it was quite funny, but I just don't think it fit the prize category as well as others could have done. While the book was very beautiful, I definitely get where Greg was going with it by saying that gossip isn't beautiful, and it can be quite harmful and things like that and toxic. So I definitely felt that fell short of it, because I do think the actual book itself was beautiful. And if I received it, I would probably say, oh, that's a really beautiful book. But, I don't really think she argued it that well. We then had Maisie, who brought in a ball on a string. And again, while I found the actual story around this really entertaining and very funny, I always love when they bring up Greg's experience as a teacher, because he was obviously a very messy teacher, and I think it's just hilarious. I loved his reaction to the story as well. So while I love that, I don't think this item could be described as beautiful. It was a ball on a string. So I just didn't really understand why she chose it for this category. Sanjeev, I think, had a good idea, which was to bring in a tea towel that tricks them into saying that this is the most gorgeous gift ever. So I liked that idea of it. I liked it was a bit clever. I liked the trickery behind it. But he could have chosen a more beautiful looking tea towel, because as Greg said, you did make the effort of trying to trick me, but it wasn't actually beautiful. So I definitely think he could have taken it one step further. So the way Greg scored this is he gave Anya 1 point and then Maisie 2. Sanjeev got 3, Phil got 4, and obviously Reese got 5. And I would say I think this is a really good prize category to bring in. You thinking of something that's okay, I've got to think of something that would be a good gift, but that's also really beautiful. And I think Reese was the only one who actually succeeded in that category. I think his, in comparison to everyone else's, was just miles ahead. And I feel Anya and Maisie's ones, they felt like prizes that they wanted to bring in regardless. They just thought they were funny prizes, funny story around it, but couldn't find a category to fit it to, and this was the best fit. That's how those prizes felt to me, because I wouldn't say Maisie's one was beautiful at all, and I think Anya maybe could have argued hers a bit better. I like the idea of both of these prizes. I just don't think it's the right category for them. And now on to the first proper task of the episode, and this one was they had to work out what number Alex had written it down. They had 20 questions and Alex could only answer yes or no. And then there was this added thing of having to be increasingly surprised by the answer, which I don't really think they really took into consideration at all in the task. But I did overall quite enjoy this one. I think it was more of a simplistic task, but I do think it worked quite well. And I like that, we kind of got elements of people doing the surprise thing throughout, restarting on the being surprised way too early, which I think set up his attempt very nicely. So we started off seeing Maisie, Reese and Phil, and yeah, they all did pretty terribly, and it was almost kind of baffling how badly they were doing. So I think they all had some good ideas of where to go with the questions. So, Maisie started off asking single digits, things like that, which I thought was quite good. Rhys was starting to know, is it between 1 and 10? Phil had the good idea of asking whether or not it was a prime number, which I think was a very smart question. That's a very Alex thing to do, is to use prime numbers. That was smart. However, he did fall into the trap of asking a lot of unnecessary questions. So saying like, oh, is it above 50? And then him saying no. So then asking, is it under 50? Well, of course it's under 50 because you just asked if it's over 50. So that I think definitely like hindered him quite a lot, and like he was also just commenting a lot and then asking questions at the end of his comments that then Alex had to take as a question. So yeah, he definitely wasted, I would say, probably like half of his questions, and Alex did seem to find that quite funny. Maisie as well, she asked some weird questions. So she was asking about like who wants to be a millionaire, and asking about like, oh, is it over like 62,000, which Alex said yes, though she could have got really close to the actual answer by just saying like 70,000 or something like that, and that would have been a lot closer than her final guess. Because then again, she just wasn't really keeping track of her questions, which I know would have been difficult. I don't know how long it would have taken for the contestants, and obviously we were only seeing a compilation of like 30 seconds or whatever. And then she answered the phone call from Lil Wayne, and he said 360, and then she guessed 360, even though she was just told it was above like 62,000. Which, yeah, I just don't get why she wasn't really keeping track of her questions. Even if she was writing down things, that would have been a lot better. There was no rules against that. However, I did love her reaction to when she did ask whether it was 360, just like knocking over the chair and saying that's insane, which I couldn't quite tell whether that was her genuine reaction or whether that was her surprised reaction. Rhys as well also fell for some of the tricks, so he spotted 63 dotted around the room and guessed 63, which it obviously wasn't. I also liked that they pointed out after 11 questions the only thing he'd worked out was that it was above 50, and then he started getting onto the right track by saying is the first digit a 1, and then is the second digit a 0, so we got that it started with 1 and 0, it was above 50, and his final guess was 10. Which was just madness. Maisie as well, just giving up at the end, guessing 3. She could have guessed something that was above 60,000 because that's what she had worked out. So it's just like, it genuinely, like I said, it was just a bit baffling. Phil as well, like he actually was the one who actually put a bit more effort into this. So he found the equation in the room and I think tried to work it out or like couldn't really do it, but he eventually guessed 8,500, which is not a bad guess. And I think, you know, in the scheme of things, did quite well in comparison to Maisie and Rhys. One thing I did like about this was just how much Maisie seemed to hate this task. They were kind of mocking her in the studio with the millionaire question and stuff like that, and she seemed to get quite angry at that as well and saying how like it was a bad task. So I liked that aspect of it. Rhys again seemed quite annoyed in the actual the filmed task part of it. Phil just seemed to have a good time. But like, yeah, I did like that. I think it was funny, their reactions. But again, like I said, just madness how they just weren't keeping track of their questions. They were just making like really like stupid guesses. But it was very entertaining. We then saw Anya and Sanjeev, and thankfully these two seemed to have a bit more common sense. So I think Anya definitely had a good idea of working out that there was a number somewhere in the room and that it was written somewhere down. That was definitely a smart idea. She answered the phone call as well, and this time said 120, I think. Don't know why they were different, but of course that was also wrong. But then she definitely pinned on to this point of being it was to do with his birthday. Considering he had a birthday badge on, I'm surprised that nobody else picked up on that. I guess there were a lot of red herrings around, so they might have thought it was that. But there was no harm in asking, especially when you're wasting your questions on silly ones anyway. Sanjeev as well was quite smart by like working out kind of the order of magnitude he was looking at, so asking is it between 1 and 10, 10 and 100, 100 and 1,000, and I think he got that it was above 10,000, which was a really, really good starting point because he could just have ended his guess at 10,000 and still would have come second, I think. So that was very smart, and I thought that was a really good idea. He also had a really good idea in thinking it could be a phone number, which with the phone ringing, I thought that was smart. So he was definitely trying to work out what all the clues were around the room. He also found out that it was written somewhere in the room and started like looking around all the things, threatening to like smash things in with a mallet to get into them, even though like that had nothing to do with it. But he found like the etchings of it written down, so managed to get it that way, which I thought was like good. You know, everybody I think figured out that it was somewhere in the room, and he was the only one who actually bothered to look. I know Phil did look and found the equation, but like, you know, Sanjeev was the only one who actually properly looked around. I know there might be a little bit of controversy with Anya's attempt because she Just by chance the phone rang and it was Alex's wife trying to call him. I love that he's got her saved as mum on the phone. Like, I get why, but it's really funny out of context. So she decided to call back, and I think this was fully allowed. I don't think that she should have points taken away, but I can imagine that it would have been a controversial attempt. But I think because she worked out it was his birthday, I think ringing his wife to ask what his birthday is a smart idea, and anyone else could have used the phone. I know that they might not have realised that it was Alex's phone, and I am quite surprised that he uses his personal phone in these tasks. Like, why not just get a phone that's used in tasks rather than just using his own one? But I quite like that as well. So yeah, I do think she used what she had and she used it well. Like, she could have anyone could have used that phone and googled what Alex's birthday is. So Anya and Sanjeev both got that the number was 10:09:78, which is Alex's birthday. And yeah, Anya got it quicker, only by 3 seconds, which is really impressive. So she gets 5 points. Sanjeev got 4, and then they decided to give everybody else points based on how close they were. I think there perhaps should have been a distinction between the people who got it right and the people who just guessed. Phil, I do think, is deserving of third. Like, he did attempt to work out the equation and at least got closer to the number, like by a good amount than everybody else. So he gets 3 points. Reese, who gets 10, got 2 points, which I think is madness, and Maisie, who gets 3, got 1. Like, Reese and Maisie, they just confused me. I feel like they're both very smart people, and yet to fail so badly on this one is just ridiculous. As I mentioned, Anya's attempt could have been seen as quite controversial, and Reese calling her out and almost getting quite defensive about it, I think was quite a tense moment. I don't think he meant anything bad by it, but I just think the way he said it came across a little bit defensive and a little bit argumentative. But I do think everybody played it off quite well, and like I said, I don't think he meant anything by it. I think that's just, he probably just got caught up in it. But I think it was our first tense moment we've had for a while. I think it's kind of giving me flashbacks to series 10 where things were a little bit tense as well. Overall, it was very funny, and I'd like that it kind of surprised everybody else in the studio that there were kind of people getting a bit more defensive and argumentative about it. But I do quite like a little bit of competition in these. So I don't think, like I said, I don't think it's anything bad, but I just think it was one of those moments that we kind of got a bit close to being perhaps going over the line a little bit. We've established quite early on how angry Reese can appear, so I am enjoying it, but yeah, it kind of got a little bit close to that line for me. Next up, we had a team task, but this one was different because they mixed up the teams. Some people are wondering whether or not these are the initial teams that they had planned, or whether they're just deciding to change it up a bit, because they have done that before, where the teams in series 9 springs to mind, where the teams were Joe Brand and David Baddiel and then the other 3, and then in the studio whenever they had team ones it was Ed and David paired together. So they do mix up their teams occasionally, so it could just be one of those things, I don't know. But we started off with this task with Phil walking in eating chicken soup, and I loved his explanation behind this because it is kind of charming when people walk in with a cup of tea. But yeah, he just took it one step too far, and yeah, it's not quite the same appeal with chicken soup, but I thought it was hilarious. So this task was they had to make a heart with their bodies and their teammates' bodies, and any other things that they could find around them. And I loved everybody's confusion about talking about teammates, because we don't have teammates by myself, but I do think this setup is a really good idea, by having them basically do 18 tasks but at completely separate times. And the idea of leaving a 10-second voice note I think is quite funny as well, because it forces them to get a lot of information and detail into a very short amount of time. I feel like it's a little bit better with a team of 3 because you do then get a second person having to explain things, so it's that extra difficulty. With 3 people it's a bit more similar to the telephone game, so each time it gets a bit more confused or difficult. So I liked that part of it, and I do wish there could have been another person for the team of 2 to make it a bit more complicated for them. So the teams that we saw were Anya and Reese together, and then Maisie, Phil and Sanjeev. And they, like I said, they had to record a 10-second voice note, and it was the most affecting heart wins. So they had to do some sort of movement or something like that to make it affecting. So we started off seeing Anya and Reese, or more so Anya's attempt, and she made a really nice heart, lots of pinks and reds. and she started off putting Mum in the heart, which I thought was a nice throwback to the previous task that we just saw. But yeah, I think her attempt is quite ambitious, and yet it paid off really well. Her 10-second voice note was so incredibly detailed. There were so many things that she was able to include, getting very key things right, like saying I'm on the left side, I'm using my body as the curve at the top, and explaining the fact that she included pinks in it and it should be beating. Like, lots of those important things. She did confuse Reese a lot by talking about the umbrella, and I think obviously what she meant to say was the side is the umbrella, so she's the curved bit on the top, side is the umbrella, I think she must have just stumbled, and Reese just was not understanding that at all. And I love that probably wasted a lot of time, him trying to work out what the umbrella had to do with anything. And she also got, like, I think very clearly across that she wants Mum written in the heart, but she's only done the M and half the U. Like, she was so incredibly detailed in 10 seconds. It's like actually very impressive. And Reese did a really good job of following her instructions. Obviously he got confused with the umbrella thing, but he made sure to include lots of pink. He got the other half of the U and the M, and they said like they fit together really, really well. He was on the right side. Like, I did get a little bit scared when he lay down on the wrong side, but he was just kind of like testing out where he should be. So I just thought Anya gave incredible instructions and Reese followed them incredibly well, and their hearts matched up so perfectly. I thought this was such a really good attempt. And yeah, very difficult for the team of 3 to follow, especially as theirs was more challenging. I also love that they kept showing that clip of him getting attacked by the little bug. Very funny. I love it when they kind of pull out those little embarrassing moments. Yeah, loved it. We then saw Maisie, Phil and Sanjeev, and Maisie started off the heart, and she kept it very simple, which I do think is smart, but it does make the end product not look as good. But she was going on affecting as like, it will affect Greg in a nice way. So she was paying him compliments. So her idea was that she'd be the little V at the bottom, and then Phil and Sanjeev can both be one like curve at the top, which I think was a very good idea, a good way of splitting that heart into 3. I think she got a lot of good things across in her instruction to Phil, saying that she's wearing all black, she's going to be the bottom, and each other person should be one side of the heart, and then that they should complement Greg. Phil definitely was the weakest part of this team, but I thought it was very entertaining. So he followed the instruction of getting dressed up in black very like to the T, and got dressed in all black with a lot of different clothes that probably took a lot of time to do. So probably not the best idea, but I do like his idea of like reverse stripping. I thought that was very funny. And he didn't really make the shape very well, but I think he thought that they were filling the heart in all black, or like I hope that's what he thought, because his curve would have been like terrible if that's what he was actually trying to do. So I liked that. I thought, you know, he did follow the instructions quite well. However, his biggest downfall was not passing on much of the instructions at all. But my God, that voice note was funny. I love that, like, I don't know how much time, like, percentage-wise he wasted by saying, hey mate, like, just so funny. And Sanjeev's face when he started listening to the voice note was hilarious. His reaction was just perfect. Because, yeah, this was probably the worst instructions that he could have passed on. At least he got across that Maisie was at the bottom, he was on the left side, and Sanjeev should be on the right. So he got that bit across, which was really good, but I don't think he got across the fact that they were all supposed to be dressed in black, and he definitely didn't get across the fact that they had to pay a compliment to Greg. But I do, like, I've got to give a lot of credit to Sanjeev here. He did a really good job, I thought, you know, especially with what he was given. But the fact that he got that curve like perfectly, like they pointed out that him, Maisie and him, like that part of the heart was just perfect. So that was just incredibly good. But I love the way that they revealed that the fact that Phil hadn't got this across, because I knew obviously from the voice note that he hadn't told him to do that. But, you know, hearing Maisie give the compliment and then hearing Phil do it and then Sanjeev just being silent was very funny. And Phil's reaction to finding out that he'd not given across that instruction, Maisie looking disappointed. And yeah, I just thought it was brilliant. Like, I do think this was quite an interesting task, and I hope they do something similar to this, like going forward. I think it's an interesting setup. I don't think they should do something exactly the same, but I do like that idea of having to kind of leave instructions in like a tricky way. I know they've done different things like this before. I think they've done it where they've had to read something out and it's played backwards, or they have to say something backwards and it's read out forwards. Like, they've done things where they've had to really challenge their communication and like limit their communication. And I do really like that concept of a task. And the way this task was scored is that the team of 2, so that's Anya and Reese, both got 5 points, and then Maisie, Phil and Sanjeev got 3 points. And I think this is a really fair way to score it because I think they both put in a lot of effort. The team of 2's was better, but I think it also reflects that the team of 3 did have a more difficult challenge. Now, on to the last task of this episode, obviously exceeding the studio task, and this one was to win the horse race. When they first read this task, I thought I was going to love it. I was really excited for them to be using the horse racing track, but I just don't think it's like as best as they could have done. You know, they've got this whole horse racing track, and I know there's probably loads of tasks that we haven't seen that they're using it, but I love the idea. I just don't think it was executed amazingly well. But I do think it was an entertaining task. So the way this worked is they had different things that they could do. They could either eat an olive without looking. If they ate an olive, they then advanced 2 steps. If they ate a grape, they got -3. They could throw a dart. Again, if you landed on an olive, you go forward 5, but if you land on a grape, you go back 8. And then the worst one of all was there to spin a wheel, and they do specify that it had to spin 720 degrees. If it landed on the olive, then you got 10 steps forward, and if it landed on the grape, then you got -15 steps. So very, very tough negatives there, I think. But like I said, it's very luck-based, apart from the eating the olive one, because you can kind of feel them out, like, you know, olives have holes in, grapes don't, so that's a pretty easy guess, I think. So apart from that one, they're all luck, which I think does make it quite difficult. I do like that, you know, like I said, the task was entertaining. I like them having to name their horses. So we had Anya calling hers Dr. Magic, Reese Mashy Niblick, Phil Old Pip, Sanjeev George Clooney, and then Maisie Red Room, which you got wrong. It should have been Red Rum. And I do think it's amazing that Reese said Red Rum when he was like doing his impression. Like, what are the chances of that? And I love again that we've got Maisie being angry in the studio with them like beginning to make fun of her getting it wrong and her threatening to walk out of the studio. Very funny. I like that she kind of like really played into it of like, this is going to be her angry episode, which I definitely understand. So the way that they showed us this task was we saw all of their attempts at like getting olives and grapes and whatnot, and then we saw the actual race at the end. So I do like that setup, because sometimes I think there were a few like surprising attempts, like people you thought might have done better than others actually didn't. So I liked that setup of it. But yeah, so we started off seeing Maisie, Sanjeev and Reese, and they all just did this task like as intended. They ate olives, they threw darts, and they span the wheel. I liked that they kind of pointed out that all the Northerners didn't like olives. I think that was quite funny. And yeah, we saw Maisie and then Phil later on having to eat the olives, and they obviously did not like it. Maisie, Sanjeev and Reese all had like a mixed attempt, I think. They got some pluses, they got a few negatives, but overall I think generally did quite well, especially Maisie and Sanjeev. Like when we were watching them, I thought that those two were the ones that perhaps had done quite well. They seem to definitely land on more olives than grapes. And Sanjeev, I think from a lot of it was just eating olives, so just advanced quite slowly that way, which I thought was a smart idea. And that's probably the approach I would have gone if I was like looking to win. Obviously, they're not just doing these tasks to win, they're doing them to be entertaining. But I do think probably the best approach would just have been to eat a lot of olives, because at least like if you did get it wrong, the penalty's not as bad, because the -8 and definitely the -15 penalties are just so difficult. Like that's really harsh. Reese, I think, did get a little bit unlucky at the start because he landed on quite a lot of grapes when he was doing the darts. And I do like when he span the wheel and it landed like on him, it fell on him, and he started arguing about the fact that he didn't land on the olive, and then he pointed out that you actually do want to land on the olive. So I liked that. Like I just like him immediately being angry at everything. Like his default mode is anger, which I am really enjoying. For the most part, like I said, a little bit tense before, but overall I do really enjoy. So yeah, I thought all three of these like seemed like they did quite well. I thought Sanjeev would have won this one, judging by like what we saw in just their attempts. Obviously we then saw Anya and Phil afterwards, But yeah, Anya and Phil both were just terribly unlucky at the start. They were mainly focusing on the wheel, I think, but also the darts as well. But they just kept landing on the grapes and got so many penalties. Really, really bad luck. But that's exactly why I probably wouldn't have done that. And I would have found a different approach and probably just ate the olives. Anya did try to do that, but she ate the grape. But I guess she just didn't think that she could probably like feel it out properly. She has to pick one. I don't know. Yeah, she did struggle to actually find the plate as well to begin with, which I thought was quite funny. As I said, Phil also just got really unlucky with the wheel, and they both had the idea to kind of tamper with and change like the approach of using the wheel. So I did prefer Phil's workaround a bit better than Anya's. So Phil decided to just take off all the grapes from the wheel and then span the wheel normally and just landed on olives every time. Anya had a different approach where she would just place the wheel on top of an olive that had fallen on the floor, and then she was saying it landed on olive every time. However, I do feel like the wheel said it had to spin 720 degrees and to land on it, so I don't really think it worked that well. However, I do like the thinking outside the box, so I probably would have given this a pass, and like I said, that was okay, but I did prefer the way Phil attempted it. I think him taking off the grapes, I think, is fair game. Like, they didn't say you couldn't, but I do think Anya's one is kind of skirting on the edges of whether that's allowed or not. So then we actually saw the horse derby, which I did enjoy because I think it just put into perspective how badly Phil and Anya did at the start and just how well Sanjeev and Maisie did. So they both crossed the line very, very quickly. We then had Anya catch up and come third. Phil impressively came fourth, and then Reese came last, which I was not expecting Reese to come last. I didn't think Anya and Phil would catch up, but like I said, I definitely think Sanjeev was going to win because, like I said, he was just eating the olives. He was getting safe, like, forward steps, and he wasn't really getting too many negatives. So the way that this was scored was just based on like the points. There wasn't really any debate that we saw. There might have been studio debate, but there wasn't any debate we saw about the legitimacy of Phil or Anya's attempts. I'm assuming that just was accepted straight away and there were no arguments, but who knows. So we had Reese getting 1, Phil getting 2, Anya got 3 points, Maisie got 4, and then Sanjeev won this task and got 5 points. We then had the studio task, and this one, again, I feel like it fell a bit flat, and I don't know if it's the design of the task or just the way it played out. So this one was that they had to fill out the form, and there were a bunch of different questions, and it was basically having to deceive Greg. So they either tell the truth or lie, and Greg had to work it out. Whenever we do these tasks, Greg is just so good at getting it right. Like, he just seems to be able to work out whether people are lying. Apart from Susan Wokoma in series 16, she deceived him a lot, but he is normally very good at guessing these type of things. So the way it was just like, if you get knocked out, then you're out. And yeah, it wasn't the longest game ever. So Anya had to guess like what her favourite motorway was. And a bit of controversy around Anya's attempt. So she said M40 but wrote A40, and Greg thought that she didn't write M40. So technically was right, but they decided to give her the pass and say she meant to write M40. So Greg did technically get this one wrong. And yeah, I think it's valid. I think she definitely just got a bit confused. I don't really know anything about motorways, so I probably would have been stuck for this one as well. But I do watch her. She does like little questions after each episode. She did say that it was a pretty bad way to win an episode, but I don't think so. You know, it's a little mistake, and I think given that she was the first one, I think that was fair to say. It's just unfortunate that everybody else got knocked out. So Maisie had best kitchen utensil. She guessed kettle and said kettle, and Greg thought she did. Phil had to say what he wrote for something big, and he told the truth and said that he wrote, you know, and obviously making an innuendo of some sort there, and Greg got that right. Reese had to name what he wrote as like a band name, and I did quite like his one, which was Style Lemon, which was a lie because he wrote Style Bomb, and Greg again got that correct. And then Sanjeev had to write a scary animal, and I think did attempt to like bluff a little bit here and say leopard, which is what he did right, and Greg of course got that right. So everybody apart from Anya got knocked out, and I am surprised that they all got 4 points. I was expecting them to all get 1, but I do think it's fair, like 4 points, they all technically came second. There was only 1 round. A little bit disappointing. I would have liked to see what other people's answers were, and I do like the kind of bluffing game, but it is always difficult when it's against Greg because he is just ridiculously good at this type of thing. So this episode ended with Anya and Sanjeev having the same amount of points, so we went to a tiebreaker. So this time they had to remove the shower cap by inflating a balloon that was like connected to their mouth, so they just had to just blow into it. And Anya was so quick. I don't know whether her hair was an advantage here, but yeah, Sanjeev I think did get a little bit unlucky because he was blowing the balloon up more than Anya did. It just got in an awkward position and wasn't knocking the shower cap off. So this means that Anya wins episode 4, and I do think this is well deserved. I thought she was going to win last episode, and I do think she is a very consistent contestant in terms of scoring, so I'm very happy that she did win. So overall, as I said at the beginning of this video, I do think this is their weakest episode so far. However, I did really enjoy the first task, mainly in terms of like their attempts and just how confusingly bad they were at this, especially 3 of the contestants. And I did enjoy the alternative team task as well, but I do think some of these felt a little bit flat. The studio task in particular, the horse racing one wasn't I wasn't really a big fan of the horse racing one, just because it was purely luck based, and the workarounds I did enjoy, but I think it just wasn't it was a little bit anticlimactic really. And then the prize task as well, I thought Reese was the only one who actually kept the category, or actually put in like a major amount of effort into this prize task, and I just don't think many people's prizes fit this category at all. So it is a confusing episode for me because I did enjoy it, I enjoyed watching it, but I do think the actual tasks were a little bit weaker this time, which is a shame because I thought last episode's tasks were really strong. Let me know what you guys think. Do you agree with me, or did you think all these tasks are really good? Obviously there is an element of personal preference here as well. But yeah, let me know what you guys think, and if you like this video then please leave a like, it really helps. And yeah, subscribe and I'll have some more videos out for you soon. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!